Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, we discuss a 99-piece platinum-cased limited edition launched in 2001. This is the FP Journe Chronometre A Resonance Ruthenium. The Ruthenium model built in 99 pieces, but Journe production was kinder, gentler, and less prolific back then, so the 99 were actually constructed from 2001 through the 2005 model year. Now, what's interesting about the Ruthenium set is that there were 5 Ruthenium models, all with Ruthenium-coated gold dials, 40mm platinum cases, and Ruthenium-coated brass movements. You can see here that this is one of the 99 Ruthenium Resonance, and it has a case manufacturing code of 01, so that's the year the case was made, and R is the reference. You can see it's a French-made Eleanor case with the 2 French eagle hallmarks and the Eleanor maker's mark, but also the Swiss hallmarks. These cases were made in France, but the watches were assembled in Switzerland. This might be my favorite version of the Resonance because it's just a powerful combination of size and presence. 40mm is a good size, but it's not a big watch. 9mm thick, from lug tip to lug tip, 47.8mm as I measure this one, with a 20mm spacing between the lugs. There were 5 Ruthenium models. The Zodiac's not one of them, even though it looks like it might be, but if you were to collect all 5, that would be the ultimate Journe collecting theme. On the wrist, you can see it's a good fit. It's really thin. It'll slide easily under a dress cuff. Looking down the barrel, you can see I've got a little bit of clearance here, so I think this would fit on a wrist of 14 centimeters circumference. Mine is 16, so you can judge for yourself. Of course, the strap is newer than the watch, and you know this because it's a Journe factory strap that's small round scale gator on the bottom, large rectangular symmetrical scales on the top, and that's a really expensive top cut, the large rectangular symmetrical. And whereas most brands still use calfskin on the bottom, the use of gator on the bottom creates a more expensive but also much longer wearing strap. No crimping, no gouging, brand new Journe factory strap, folded edge, monotone stitch. Note the use of a curved spring bar because Journe cases are drilled very close inboard, and the idea is to move the pivot center of the strap inboard for better small wrist fit. But if you don't have a curved spring bar, you wind up with an impediment to the motion of the strap. So the curved bar is used, and then long after this watch was made, Journe started using pull tab spring bars. So you pull this little tab and the strap pops right off the case. Platinum buckle to match a platinum watch. You can actually see the hallmarking is, I'll try to do my best to show you, it's inside the inner face of the buckle. Now, the case is simple and well-known. Journe uses 2 crowns here, only one of which is actually a crown, but the unbranded double dimple knurled design, which is a Journe signature, is repeated. The case is basically comprised of a symmetrical bezel and case back, both domed with a flange defining a mid-case, so a 3-piece case design. And then we have blended or integrated Calatrava-style lugs that turn down almost 90 degrees from the horizontal of the case band, which helps with fit. Now, what you're looking at here is not actually a crown, it's a flyback trigger. Because from the time you start this watch to the time acoustic resonance couples both sides, it's about 7 to 10 minutes. As a result, you will eventually wind up with coupled movements, and it is 2 movements in one case, but the hands may not be parallel. At that point, they become coupled together. So here, we have this little system where you pull this trigger, and it works just like a flyback chronograph, synchronizing the seconds hands. So you have that pleasing aesthetic of perfectly aligned seconds hands, and they should stay coupled to better than 5 seconds per 24 hours. The dial is made of gold, but it's ruthenium coated, which gives it this cool anthracite sheen. You can also see that we have polished steel bezels framing 2 independent time zones in a 12-12 format characteristic of the first generation Resonance. And then we have these dials which are actually made of whitened silver. So those are silver dials, not just color silver, but the precious metal silver. Journe's distinctive tapered blue hands are present along with counterweighted lancet style seconds hands. We have a clou de Paris at the center of each of these registers with a azurage or concentric pattern outboard as well as on the small seconds. The power reserve indicator works backwards. So when you wind it slowly like this if you're going to wind it with the strap on, but it travels backwards. You can see as I wind it, it is progressing towards 0. And that's because Journe considers this to be chronometre, like a marine chronometer. And so on a marine chronometer, the power reserve doesn't tell you how much time until it stops, but how many hours since it was last fully wound. Because it was important to wind a marine chronometer at the same time every day, you needed to know when it had been exactly 24 hours since the last winding. So when this 42-hour power reserve is fully wound, the hand indicates 0. Now, you can set it with the strap-ons, don't worry about that, but one direction will set one of the dials, and the other direction, there's quite a bit of play in the mechanism, but the other direction, if you pull it out enough, will set the other dial. I recommend you go slow if you want to wind it or set it with the strap in place. Unless you're absolutely certain and you have experience with it, I recommend popping the strap off to do that. Less risk. Okay, dial side hardware. Look at all the screws on this dial. This was an early Journe design trait, and at the time it was criticized back in '99 when he launched his first tourbillon. In time, it's become a design signature and also widely emulated. Of course, everyone knows eventually the Resonance would go to a unusual combination of a scrolling disc 24-hour display and a 12-hour display, and I like that one. That is an incredible design. That's my favorite Resonance dial. This is my favorite model overall. But the 1212 is classically beautiful and preferred by collectors. Around back, we have a brass movement era Journe. Of course, the brass movements were phased out starting in mid-2004 for gold movements, and while gold is worth more as a commodity, it's worth less as a Journe on the basis that gold movement Journes are now quite common. They're not making any more brass calibers in production at the time, and the early days of the brand was lower. So here you could see that we have two independent movements with two independent power supplies. The only thing they really share is a crown wheel and a base plate and a barrel bridge. So here we have a barrel, a drivetrain, an escapement, a balance. Barrel, drivetrain, escapement, a balance. Now they're both adjusted in 6 positions and free sprung for both durability against shock-induced timing deviation, and because making adjustments to timing using these eccentric screws allows for a much more precise adjustment than some sort of mobile stud index with curb pins. So they're free-sprung for durability against shock, but also for precise adjustment. Note that these are flat hairsprings. Overcoils aren't used for a specific reason. The hairsprings are opposite in their orientation, and acoustic resonance, which is distinct from the type of spring coupling resonance used by others like Armin Strom, but acoustic resonance will eventually, by virtue of the energies radiating out from the friction and the losses, they will cause these wheels to synchronize, but they beat in opposition. And so having these hairsprings alternately oriented means that in one position, a hairspring is going to be caused to run slower, but the other one's going to be caused to run faster. And due to a shake or a knock, one of these balance wheels moving in opposite directions, remember, might be slowed down, but the other one will bring it back up to speed because that equal and opposite wheel will be sped up. So we have both opposing hairsprings and opposing oscillation. Again, we have the beating in opposition. So these are self-regulating, self-correcting chronometer-style balances. And it's a very cool thing. It's a 3 Hertz beat rate. It's a fairly large movement here. It's 32.6 millimeters, 30 meters water resistance, but please don't try to test that theory. You can see at center much of the adjustment of the resonance to make sure these are actually resonating. It's done using this gold pinion screw, which has its own polished bridge. And then you can see that there's a rack next to the pinion with a set screw to fix it in place. And all of this is mirror finished. And so this balance cock can actually move in and out. And there's only a hair's breadth between these two things. And the distance, which is almost too small to see as it's adjusted, is really the key to getting them to resonate. Taking a look at the bridges, I have to say that the decoration standard here is much higher than I've seen on other Journes of such a distant vintage. Typically, they have very ugly, obvious milled edges where the bite marks from the wheel are present. Now, these were started mechanically, but they were finished by hand, giving them this lovely rounded look that's uncommon on early Journe. Taking a look at all the screw heads, they're polished. We have solarization on, I guess it's more of a snailed solarization on the crown wheel outer and then the ratchet wheels themselves. So polished screw heads. You can see that mounting pegs or locating posts that are used to locate bridges on underlying structure, those have been polished on their tops. And then we have beveling inside the jewel sinks, which is a nice touch with engine turning on the base plate. And then we have this lateral Côte de Genève execution. A special watch. I've often said if you're going to buy one of the two pillars of Journe's legacy as a watchmaker, you're going to get a Res or you're going to get a tourbillon with remontoir. And I feel like the more distinctive the example you get, the more collectible, and they don't come much more collectible than the Ruthenium. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.